guys, let's get into 70s through 91. Okay, we are almost to the end of it. We are only focusing on what's tested in this unit so that you can get it down. I'm not going to go into a lot of explanation. I'm just going to focus on the major topics. Now, remember, MissCastillo'sAwesomeHistory.com. Your test is April 25th. You're going to do amazing, but use this as your study guide because it has your modules that I've used with these last couple of videos, but it also has your information as far as quizzes that are embedded in the modules. Then you have GimKits, Quizlet, Kahoot. You have vocabulary words that are set up with pictures. Everything that you could use to be successful in this exam is in this website. So use it and do well and take your time and use your test taking strategies. But let's move on and get started. Okay, so let's get into our presidents here. And like I said, we're only focusing on the things that we know are going to be tested because you've already learned all of the things. We're just going to focus on the major important tested material. So let's start with Nixon. Okay, so I know that we already talked about Nixon a lot as far as Vietnam, and so I'm not going to mention those important tested items because I already did in the Vietnam video, like Vietnamization and Watergate. But we do have the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. So if you saw something that has something to do with protecting the environment in some form or fashion, you know we're dealing with the EPA and we're dealing with Nixon. Like, so if you saw Earth Day would clearly be connected to the EPA, right? So the other two that are connected with this would be the Endangered Species Act, which is pretty self-explanatory. An animal that's on the endangered species list would be, we would try to protect it so it doesn't become extinct. And then you would also have the national parks, and that would be under Theodore Roosevelt for Progressive Era. And that one is a tested one, but we went over that in Progressive Era. But if you saw a picture of Theodore Roosevelt standing in sparse land with someone else surveying the area, they're looking for a park. They're looking for land to set aside for federal protection to build parks. The EPA is going to be looking for ways to protect the earth and its resources. So if you saw something with climate change or Earth Day, you know we're probably dealing with the EPA. Now, war on drugs is first going to start with the Nixon presidency, and we'll talk about it again in the Reagan presidency, which I didn't write there, but I will write here. Just Say No, which is his wife's campaign. But for here, we've got the war on drugs, and we're really pushing that concept that we're trying to get people to stop using and stop selling. So stop using and stop selling, right? So that if they're caught, they go to jail, right? So we're going to start putting people in jail for drug usage. Détente is going to be the softening of relations with the Soviet Union. So we're really going to be looking at, like, a great way to understand the word détente is to think about noodles when they become that perfect consistency when you're cooking them, when you're boiling them. They're that perfect consistency. And so that's what détente is that perfect consistency that we want with the Soviet Union. We don't want to be buddy-buddy with the Soviet Union, but we don't want to be at odds with them, like at war with them either. So it's this kind of softening of relations. So softening of our relationship with them. But it's also that perfect consistency. We're not friends, but we're not at war. Okay. Normalization of relations, which China is going to be the idea that we are going to begin trade. We want to make it normal. Make trade normal with China. Very simple. We'll start to have visits over there. Nixon will be the first president that goes over there and just really has that visit, sits down, gets to know everything going on with the country, really trying to open, having conversations and talks and things like that. Now, Ford comes into president because Nixon resigns. Nixon resigns because of the Watergate scandal, where he gets caught spying on the Democrats during an election. So Ford is going to become president because he's the VP of Nixon. When Nixon resigns, the VP now has to become president. Initially, it was always if the president got hurt, if they were sick, if they died. But now we have to add in resignation. Nixon is going to resign, and then Ford is going to pardon him. So the 25th Amendment is really going to add in the idea that if a president resigns, then the VP takes over. So that's going to be the concept there. So VP takes over the president. Now we're going to move on. That's really all we need to focus on with Ford. You already know about Nixon's pardon and the fall of Saigon, where North Vietnam takes over and wins the war. And then Vietnam unifies under one communist country. All right, Jimmy Carter's got a lot of controversy going on with him, but you always have access to this and can go back and read it, but we're only going to focus on some major things. OPEC. OPEC is an oil embargo. Remember, we had an embargo on Japan in World War II where we did not allow the shipment of war supplies like fuel and steel and things like that over to Japan. And that is what we call an embargo. So we are going to have somebody put an embargo on us. And it's going to be this accumulation of Middle Eastern countries who are going to put an oil embargo on the United States. Why do they put an oil embargo on the United States? Because we are going to back Israel in the Yom Kippur War. And they're going to take that as us going against them. And so they will create the oil embargo. Now, this is important to understand because there have been questions that have asked about our relationship with Israel. And we know that from Yom Kippur War forward, we back Israel and we support their military in multiple ways. Okay? But going back to OPEC, what happens with the oil embargo? When this is tested, you generally are going to see a picture or a quote, some kind of passage reading, that is going to mention or show broke down cars, gasoline prices skyrocketing, issues with fuel and obtaining it and gasoline and things like that. Rationing. Rationing is going to take place. We've got to ration our oil. Okay, so how do we get out of this? We create other reliable forms of fuel. So it's going to force us to look for other reliable forms of fuel. Okay, that's what it's going to force us to do. Look for other reliable forms of fuel. And this is really going to build up the United States oil industry. We also have the Camp David Accords where President Carter is going to negotiate peace treaty at Camp David Accords in Maryland. Okay, so Camp David is in Maryland. So it is here in the United States, and he's going to negotiate a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. So how is this generally tested? It's tested with a picture. Okay, you generally are going to see three men standing together, two are shaking hands, and then you'll see President Carter in the back with his hand on the other two's hands, and that is the agreement. That's the historical picture for the Camp David Accords. Iran hostage crisis. What is this? 444 days. Foreign diplomats, so people that are from one country but in another to support the country they come from. So people from the United States are in Iran as a support of those relationships going on between the United States and Iran, and we have them over there, and they're taken hostage by college students Okay, take hostage U.S. foreign diplomats. So what do we do? How are we going to take care of this? Carter is going to try and do like where he goes and tries and, you know, rescues them, and it's going to fail. They're not going to get released until Reagan, okay, which is why I have that arrow here. They're going to get released when Reagan is inaugurated. So when Reagan goes in to accept the presidency during his inauguration, Iran will release the hostages, and the United States will release $8 billion in frozen assets, in frozen Iranian assets, in order to make this trade happen. So it's seen as a win for Reagan's administration. But why were these people taken hostage in the first place? The United States is going to provide refuge to the ousted Sahan of Iran and to come to the United States, get cancer treatment, and it's going to be seen as us taking sides with him rather than with the people of Iran. And so that's why it happens in the first place. So let's move on. Reagan. All right, Reagan. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. The Berlin Wall is going to fall during Reagan's administration, and East and West Germany will be unified again. They will be whole. Now, how does this happen? Well, Reagan is known for peace through strength, which is a lot like big stick theory, where speak softly and carry a big stick, with Theodore Roosevelt. So the idea, you have a big military. People listen. People listen to what you say when you have a big military and you're willing to use it, okay? Which is the same thing that Theodore Roosevelt believed. Speak softly, carry big stick. So say what you want, and if they won't do it, threaten them with your big military. Okay, the exact same thing. Easy way to remember Reagan and Roosevelt is big military, people listen. Big stick policy, peace through strength. All right, trickle-down economics. I haven't necessarily seen this tested, but I could see it tested, so I always want to cover base with this. Trickle-down economics is the idea that if you give tax breaks to big companies, then that money will trickle down to the poor. So tax breaks to the rich, create jobs, help the poor. Okay, that's the idea of it. That's the concept of trickle-down economics. People don't agree with it. There's a back and forth. Some people think it works. Some people think it doesn't work. Because they say that the rich do not utilize the money to create jobs and help poor. So therefore, those tax breaks are just put into the rich's pockets and they're not utilized for what they're meant for. So there is a back and forth debate still today over trickle-down economics. Iran-Contra affair is the scandal for President Reagan. He is going to sell weapons to Iran, and then he's going to take that money to fund Nicaragua, who has people in there trying to overthrow the government. So he is going to take the money that he gets from the sale of the weapons to Iran and fund the organization that's trying to overthrow their government in Nicaragua. The problem with what's going on here is that Iran has already been labeled a terrorist organization. And so that means that the president is selling weapons to a terrorist organization. And he's going to deny it at first. There's going to be a lot of issues with it. That is President Reagan's scandal. So how is President Reagan voted in? He's voted in by the moral majority, which we also call the conservative resurgence. Now, the conservative resurgence is going to be your right-winged people, your very focused on conservative values in the home. President Reagan is going to experience being backed by Billy Graham, who is a huge conservative evangelical preacher. Okay, and he's actually going to back the Reagan presidency. You do need to know Billy Graham. You need to know all of these things that I've written down here. And then you need to know Just Say No, which is President Reagan's wife. So Nancy Reagan is the Just Say No. That's that DARE program that people go through, kind of stems from there, that war on drugs. But now we're focusing on getting information to children to let them know that drugs are bad. And let them know early so they don't want to do them or sell them later on in life. Lastly, we've got Bush Sr. And something I didn't write here. First of all, Cold War is going to end 1991 during his presidency. Bush Sr. will also have, which you probably already studied during civil rights, but the ADA will be signed during his presidency. That is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, so that will be signed. You can't mistreat the disabled. You can't discriminate against the disabled in hiring practices, and it'll eventually stem into the schools and things like that. The other thing that we need to know about George Bush Sr. is Persian Gulf War. What do you need to know about the Persian Gulf War? Very, very simple. You need to know that Iraq invades Kuwait. This is the first time that you're going to see Saddam Hussein's name with the Persian Gulf War. He's going to be the leader. He is going to order that that invasion of Kuwait, and of course we'll get involved and stop it. The last thing that you need to know is our third party. What is going on with the third party? What's going on there? And I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Okay, so what's going on with third party? Well, we have Ross Perot, who is running for the third party. So you have Bush Sr., who is the Republican. You have Clinton, who is running for the Democratic Party. And then you have Ross Perot, who is our third party. Clinton is straight down, right? He's not really, nobody's taking votes from him. But Ross Perot is taking votes from Bush. And so therefore they are splitting the vote, right? And so all of those votes that should have just been straight down for him now are over here, and they're splitting those votes, which means that Clinton is going to get more votes than Bush. Third parties always take votes away from one major party and make it more easier for the other party to win. That's generally what takes place. We will see a little bit different circumstance with Bush Jr. So remember, their third party issues happen in both Bush presidencies. It's going to knock one Bush out of his second term. It is not going to knock the other Bush out of the second term. So this is what you need to know here. Move this down and expand this for you. Look at that. That's all you need to know for 1970s to 1991. And then we will get into the very last things that you need to know regarding the rest of the 1990s to 2008. We do talk a little bit about cultural diffusion and technology, the diffusion of both culture and technology as well. That's more modern era, but this is all you need to know for this. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so let me move this back over here. Of course, I will expand it later so that you can see everything that we're talking about here. But we're going to get into Bill Clinton. Okay, we're going to get into his presidency real quick. This is all 1992-ish to modern day, to today, okay? So let's get into Bill Clinton's presidency. What are the major things that you have to know for your exam? Well, GATT. You have to know GATT, which is your General Agreement, Tariffs, and Trade, okay? So this is going to be an agreement that is going to set up more equal trade across the globe for those who are going to take part in GATT. It's going to make it to where smaller countries can afford to trade, because smaller countries who may not have the same GDP, who may not have the same amount of money to spend, are going to cannot necessarily afford high tariffs on items. So this is going to try and equal that across the board and make it more possible for people to conduct more non-discriminatory trade country to country. NAFTA is going to be your North American Free Trade Agreement, and it is going to be between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, and it is going to make it to where, you know, we've got that free trade going on. It's actually not around anymore. What you need to know what NAFTA is, but just for your own personal knowledge, it's not NAFTA anymore. It is now the USMCA, United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement. So it's a trade agreement. Still very similar, but it is not NAFTA anymore. But you need to know NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, and it encompasses the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. The other thing you need to know about Bill Clinton is his impeachment. So Bill Clinton, we've seen a lot of impeachments take place, and they're kind of on moral and ethical grounds with like regarding stealing and lying and you know, cheating or whatever, spying, doing things you're not supposed to be doing. And if you're not supposed to be doing it, then it is an ethical issue when you're in a leadership position and you're doing it and you're held to this higher standard, that kind of thing. But Bill Clinton is going to be the first president that we see who's going to be in an impeachment hot water type of thing because of sexual immorality. So he is going to have an affair with Monica Lewinsky. So he has an affair, okay? Now, the reason that he's impeached is not because of the affair, though. The reason he's impeached is because he perjured himself. He lied, okay? He's going to lie under oath, so lie on the stand, lie on stand. Lie under oath. And that's all you need to know there. Okay, very, very straightforward. But I would say as far as the impeachment, yes, lied under oath. You need to know that's why he was impeached. He was on trial in the first place because they were trying to see if he had an affair with his with Monica Lewinsky, one of his interns. Now, going forward, it may ask you something like, what does that say about the American people? And it says that the American people still care about the moral and ethical behaviors of our people that we vote in leadership. Bill Clinton is going to appoint RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So this is a Clinton appointment for the Supreme Court. I'm just going to put Supreme Court Judge, SC Judge, okay? Hillary Clinton is Bill Clinton's wife, which makes her a first lady. So I do want to remember that as we go forward. She was a first lady. We'll talk more about her in the Obama administration. Okay. Sandra Day O'Connor I want to mention real quick also, because she is the first female Supreme Court judge. Okay, and she was actually there we go. She was appointed during Reagan's administration. So Reagan is the president that appointed her. All right. George W. Bush Jr. Let's talk about him. What's going on in his presidency? So we have 9/11. What is 9/11? Terrorist attack. and it is on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. Okay, so we have the planes fly into the Twin Towers. They fly into the Twin Towers. Okay, so here's our Twin Towers. You got that plane flying in and blowing the place up. Okay, so Twin Towers and the Pentagon. Flies into the Pentagon also. Terrible Pentagon. But anyways, flies into both of these. All right, and so then we've been attacked and we're going to go to war. So we declare the war on terror, which is mainly going to focus here on Afghanistan. I know that they're kind of, people view them one and the same. Weapons of mass destruction really focuses on Iraq. And that's all going to be coming about from 9/11. Patriotism is going to go skyrocket really high. Country western music is really going to help kind of push that patriotism that's taking place. And we're going to have a high amount of enlistment. Enlistment in the military is going to go up. And that is a result of 9/11 and that patriotism that rises up. Now we have the Patriot Act. I'm going to go ahead and erase these Twin Towers and Pentagon. Okay, so we have the Patriot Act happen, and that is going to allow, this comes about from 9/11, it allows the government to pretty much spy on communication of citizens here in the United States. So it's pretty much the, hey, we want to spy on your communications in the United States to make sure that you are not doing things that you shouldn't do, to make sure that you're not a terrorist, okay? Now, this is not without controversy. People do not agree with the Patriot Act because they believe that it is their freedom, that unless they've done something wrong, the government should not be able to just wiretap their phones and their of other forms of communication, emails and things like that. The government should not be allowed to do that without a warrant, without reasonable expectation that they're going to find something. The government sells it by saying, well, we'll look for specific words, and if those words are flagged, then we'll be able to go in and check for terrorist activity. Now, there's a big concern with the government misusing this, which eventually does come to light. And so we have the Freedom Act passed, which will try and rebalance the government's rights in this area versus the people. Moving on, let's go into Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina is just that. It's a hurricane, not necessarily a crazy strong hurricane. It does start off that way, but it lowers before it hits the shore. The problem with Katrina is that it takes out Louisiana, takes out New Orleans. Okay, so it's going to take it out, and it takes it out because of the storm surge, okay? Storm surge. Storm surge is when you have the you have a levee, okay? I'm going to write levee here. So there is a levee. A levee is something that is set up right by the water to keep the water from going over. Louisiana is under sea level. Okay, so Louisiana is very low. It's very low. And if we don't have a levee blocking that water from coming in, then this area is going to be flooded. So we build a levee to protect ourselves from the water. When a hurricane comes, the water rises, which is what your storm surge is. If that levee's not here, then this area would flood. So we have this levee here to protect ourselves from the water because we're below sea level, and we know if a hurricane comes in, that water is going to rise and it's going to flood the whole area. Now, when Katrina happens, there's been misappropriation of funds in Louisiana, and the levee has not been repaired. The levee breaks, and then the waters go over and flood out Louisiana. Now, this is going to create that migratory pattern that is going to make people leave. They are being pushed out because their areas are flooded, and they're being pulled to areas that are safer to live, like Texas. Lastly, for George W. Bush, we have the third party. Bush is the Republican. Gore is the Democrat, and they're running against each other. And Nader is the third party who's kind of taking some of those votes. Now, Bush will win the presidency. The electoral vote. So Bush will take the presidency. But before it actually happens, there'll be a recount and a lot of things going on. This is what happens when a third party comes in. It makes it very difficult for an election to be straightforward. Moving forward, though, we've got Obama. Obama is voted in 2008. That's a major date that you have to know. First African-American president. He is going to pass the Affordable Care Act and the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So what are those? Well, the Affordable Health Care Act is a tax. It's a tax because you are forced to purchase it. Okay, you're forced to buy it. The government can't force you to buy anything unless they're taxing you on something. So therefore, the Health Care Act is a tax. If you don't buy health care in the year, then you have to pay money at the end of the year in your taxes for not having health care. So it is pretty much it's a bill that requires people to purchase health care. It also brings up the United States offering a cheap form of health care with a high deductible, but yet you could afford the easy monthly payments to pay for it, which if you can't make the deductible, you still have to pay the deductible out of pocket. But that's a whole other personal finance topic. American Recovery and Reinvestment Act is going to be his other thing that he's pushing. And this is going to be allowing people to purchase green or environmental. So you can purchase green or environmental products like larger products like you could have solar panels. Okay, and so solar panels are green. It's you helping the environment, so you can purchase them and then you can use it as a tax rebate. So you can use it on your taxes to help you get money off on your taxes. So you could try and find a way to get the money back for purchasing it. It's a way to stimulate the economy. So we're trying to stimulate the economy in a way that is good for the environment. Obama is going to have his appointee, and that is going to be Sonia Sotomayor, and she is going to be the first Hispanic Supreme Court judge under the Obama administration. Okay, Obama is also going to have Hillary Clinton as his Secretary of State. And now we're also remember that after Obama, she is going to run for the presidency, which makes her the first female presidential nominee. Okay, she'll be the first female presidential nominee. That's everything that you have to know about them. The last thing that we're going to get into is this technology entrepreneur. So when we talk about, here's their pictures, by the way. When we talk about diffusion of culture, we tend to focus on westernization. So culture makes its way over to the U.S. from other countries, but typically when we refer to the diffusion of culture, we mainly focus on the dominating culture and their culture that is spreading. Originally, we called this westernization, which was the concept that Western culture spread to other parts of the world, tearing down traditional ways of doing things and bringing about Western ideals. Today, the dominant culture is American, so we call it Americanization. So America's culture is spread through the media and the internet and things like that to other countries. But we also have other countries' stuff coming to us, but we are the dominant culture, so our ideals and things like that are spreading to other areas. Diffusion of technology. Technology originally began to spread like crazy with the Silk Road, but it was slow because it was done by word of mouth or bought and had to wait until it arrived by boat. We saw many types of technology make its way into Europe. This goes from math, navigating the seas, to microscopes, fireworks, gunpowder, paper, and printing. Today, technology spreads faster because we have the internet and information is available to anyone with it. So what major technologies are we looking at as far as, go ahead and expand that, as far as entrepreneurs are concerned? The people that you were tested on, Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Amazon really helps push that diffusion of technology and culture because it ships everywhere. Places are coming, goods from other countries are coming into the United States, but the United States goods are going out of the country to other countries. So Jeff Bezos is Amazon that's really moving that diffusion of culture and technology. Steve Jobs is Apple, which you now know kind of as the iPhone and things like that. Steve Jobs is dead now, but he's the original founder, and so sometimes the questions that you get will have his name on it. Bill Gates, Microsoft. He is Microsoft, but he is also some other things. Okay, so we have Microsoft. You can't really see that. Hold on. But he is also vaccines. He's known for vaccines, going to other countries and giving vaccines to people. He is also a big investor in and researcher in pharmaceuticals, which is your medicine, right? I think he's also heavily involved in the FDA, which, would be, remember we talked about the FDA in Progressive Era, that Pure Food and Drug Act becomes the concept of the government needs to know what's inside things so that people can know what's inside things, make sure it's safe for them to take. So medicine, drugs, that's that part right there. Elon Musk, Tesla, and of course, recently Twitter. So he is very much involved in different forms of technology. This is all you need to know, guys. That is the end of 1990s to present. All right, guys, so that is it. That was your very last part of the unit. So you are completely done. These were all your review videos. Again, go to Miss Casillo's Awesome History. Use those modules and quizzes. Gem Kids, Kahoots are linked in there. Quizlets are linked in there. You have your vocabulary with all your pictures. April 25th is your STAAR. If you are not ready, study. If you are ready, study anyways. And keep up. Come and see me if you need to. If you need extra study material, you want papers or something like that, just come and see me, let me know. Bye.